Dr. Larry Waldman. Fascinating discussion. He's a psychologist. He's a child psychologist. He's not just that. He does other things too. But that's what we talk about. And I open up his latest book is "Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex." You know, how many of us have known you know, these couples that separate and use the opportunity to hurt each other with their children. It's such a terrible, terrible thing we see. He's got great advice on that, on how to handle that and how to prioritize. He gives some samples of what he's seen through the court system. He's from the Southwest of here in the U.S. and a great discussion about that. It needs to be talked about more. We also get into just general parenting. He has another book, Who's Raising Whom, where he talks about logical consequence and how, oftentimes in our work environment, if we do our job, we don't get talked to. But once there's a problem, we get punished. Does that get taken down? Does it get taken into our parenting where our children are doing what they're supposed to do, but they don't get the attention? And once something goes wrong, they get the attention. And sometimes they want attention, even if it's negative. A great discussion on that. I really enjoyed my discussion with Dr. Larry, as I call him. It's just, again, I think we just need to have more discussions about this. I certainly learned a lot. I think you will as well. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Dr. Larry Waldman, thank you so much for your time today. I'm very, very excited to talk to you. Why is it important to love your child more than you hate your ex?
Well, that's a real interesting question. That's the title of my latest book that came out during COVID. Uh, I was a forensically oriented psychologist for the last 20 years of my practice, uh, which I concluded the end of 18. At least I don't see patients actively anymore. But I spent a lot of time in the family court arena. I was appointed by the court frequently to work with couples that were involved in acrimonious divorces, unfortunately. And again, unfortunately, in many of those cases, the children were caught in the middle. Arguments about custody, scheduling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was my job, depending on what the judge asked me to do, was to try to mediate between those parents, and basically get them to understand that what you're doing is very harmful to the children.
Hmm.
I saw hundreds of them, and it really is sad. These children are caught in what we call a loyalty squeeze, loyalty bind, if you will. Remember, they didn't ask for this divorce
Mm,
in
mm,
most cases. And as far as they were concerned, until this fateful day when the divorce or when the separation occurred, I should say, as far as they knew, they had the best mom in the world, best dad in the world, and their relationship was the best in the world as well.
mm,
From their limited perspective, that's what they knew. And now suddenly, the best mom in the world is saying bad things to them about the best dad, and vice versa.
mm,
And now, who are they supposed to believe? What is happening to their world? Basically, black is now white, square is now circular,
mm.
etc., etc. It really turns their lives upside down. And parents need to fully understand that. Yes, if you decide to get divorced, do that. Although I would strongly encourage couples, of course, to seek help before it even gets that
Mm,
far.
mm,
But
mm.
even if you do plan to do that, to get involved in some counseling as well, and get your kids involved in some counseling because they're going to need that support. As the title of the book says, it really is critical that we not scar our children. And in too many cases that I saw, these children were really traumatized. And so again, you need to love your child more than you sometimes hate your ex, and then for your kids' sake, try to negotiate.
In your experience, doctor, is there a kind of red zone, a danger zone of the age of the children where the most harm could be? When they're over a certain age, perhaps it won't be as bad, or when there's a certain range. Do you notice that at all, where it especially could be as damaging, where they really, really need to spend more time with her and maybe get counseling?
Yes, that's a great question, by the way. I do address that in the book. The best, probably the most vulnerable time is so 5 to 12 in
Mm,
particular. Below 5, the kids probably don't understand that much, and so on.
right.
And a lot of it is going to probably pass over their heads, and so on. After and once they reach the teenage years, they're more complete. They can think more for themselves. In fact, they'll probably let you know what you're doing that they don't like, and so on. But that vulnerable period of right before school starts or so, and approaching adolescence, that's a difficult time, because kids are more willing to take in what their parents are really telling them, and so forth. And again, when a child hears from one parent that there's something bad about the other, I mean, it really shakes them to their roots. I mean, it's like, wait a minute. I mean, I thought mommy or daddy was a good person, and so on.
Mm,
Now I'm hearing they're not, and why can't I see them, and so on? What did they do, and so on? And by the way, as a grandparent myself, and we don't often think about this, although in the work that I did, of course, I address this. What about the grandparents? And
mm,
all too often, what happens is the child may be uh, torn to some degree from one parent or the other, but also many times torn away from their grandparents, uh, particularly if it's the parents of the husband more often than not.
really?
Yes. And I've been in cases where, again, these are ugly, where One of the ways the angry wife decides to get back at hubby is to short circuit the opportunities for the children to spend time with his parents, even
Hmm.
though they might have had a close relationship previously. So again, it adds to the trauma that the children are faced with.
And I've heard you talk a lot about children, especially in that range. What is logical consequence?
Logical consequences is a term I use. That comes basically from my first book. I see you've done a little research. I appreciate that. My first book was entitled "Who's Raising Whom." Actually, the first edition came out in '84, and the second edition was about 1990 or so. Now, even though that's a couple of decades away, let me tell you, it's as valid today as
Hmm.
it was then. It's fascinating. Actually, my wife and I just had a discussion this morning about our grandchildren and so on. Basically, what I talk about in that book is to help parents learn how to behaviorally manage their children.
Hmm.
They don't come with with how to plans. They unfortunately too many parents leave that up in the air. They basically, as I call it, parent by the seat of their pants, if you will,
Hmm.
and that is not all that effective many times. Believe it or not, there really is a science, if you will. This has been studied pretty well on what we call child management or behavioral management. And what I try to do in that book is to basically summarize it and describe it in such a way that you don't have to be a PhD to follow it. In fact, I did numerous workshops in my career working with parent groups on how to raise children effectively. Um, Now, specific to your question, what is a logical consequence or appropriate consequence? Well, that's what parents would do, uh, depending on how the child behaves. Essentially, I like to boil parenting down to, good parenting is applying appropriate consequences to your child's behavior. That's it in a nutshell.
Hmm.
In other words, if when you catch your children being good, and I use that phrase, you know, actually seeking good behavior and acknowledging good behavior, the appropriate consequence for that would be what we refer to as reinforcement, so
Hmm.
that the child knows what they've done, knows specifically what they've done to be good, if you will, and why they're getting this praise or reward, as the case might be. And the reward, by the way, is not candy, it's not money,
Hmm.
it's contingent parent time. The best thing that parents can provide their children is their individual undivided attention.
Hmm.
That's what young children want more than anything else. In fact, when they're young, it's life giving. If parents don't provide attention to their kids, they'll have failure to thrive. There's an actual syndrome that occurs when parents don't attend sufficiently to their kids. Um, by the same token, if the child is doing something basically to get your goat, if you will, or that's an old expression, or to get your attention, like whining or complaining, or for that matter, tantruming, the best logical consequence is no consequence at all.
Mm.
And that is, um, you know, uh, for not too long ago, we were visiting our grandchildren, and my granddaughter, who was just turned 5, was whining about something, and of course, she was waiting for me to, react to that, and I said, I'm sorry, but. I'm not going to, spend any time with you when you're whining like that. And I walked out of the room.
Mm.
And it's amazing. As soon as I wasn't out of the room 5 seconds when this whatever catastrophe she was concerned about seemed to stop. And then she walked out of the room, came back to me, and she said, "Papa, I'm okay now. Can we play again?" I said, "Oh, sure," and so on. And we went back to playing, and so on. So you see, I was, I'm boiling a lot of this down, but you asked a great question. What I was doing, you see, is very, very scientifically, if you will,
Mm.
distributing my attention when she's behaving appropriately. I'm attending to her, I'm engaging with her, and so forth. When she's behaving inappropriately, uh, like whining and so forth, I'm not giving her more attention. And by the way, children are like celebrities in that bad attention or bad publicity is better than no publicity or attention at all, you understand.
Mm.
So I'm just giving her no attention, you see. But when she comes back out and now engages with me appropriately, I'm ready to re engage myself.
Mm.
So, in a nutshell, that's what good parenting is all about. And that's what I mean by logical consequences. It's based on being objective about observing the child's behavior and then responding appropriately. And that's
You
what
have
that person.
another. Sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
mean, you have another example about the child has to empty the dishwashing machine.
You have done some reading.
Hmm.
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, I really respect the fact that you've actually followed up. So, uh, truthfully, I've done lots of podcasts, and most podcasters don't take the time. And thank you for that. You're referring to an interesting case I had. This was a little guy. His name was Tim. In a large family, there were, I think he was one of 5 sons, which is crazy enough.
Mm.
And this was a very busy, active family, and so forth. And the parents came in, because they were so frustrated with Tim's behavior. He was the baby, and he acted like the baby, although he was like 7. I think he was like in the 7th grade, excuse me, 2nd grade, and so on. But the thing that really irritated mom more than anything else is he would fail to do his assigned chores. And one of his chores was to come home from school and immediately empty the dishwasher. Mom worked, as did Dad. At what she did, but she was a busy person as well as a very busy mom. And when she would come home and immediately begin preparing dinner, for the 4 kids and the two of them, and so on. So it was a big active family. But on most occasions, when she would come home from work and so forth and begin, preparing dinner, that dishwasher was just chock full. And then she would, find Timmy typically watching TV and so on, and then start in, "Timmy, how many times do I have to tell you?" And maybe take him by the hand, and then put him at the dishwasher, and then then Tim would milk it, like, well,
Mm.
I don't know where this goes, and make it painful when he was more than capable of doing this and so on. So, at any rate, we were having a session. I did a lot of work with parents. That was a major part of my practice back in the day, and got onto this notion of what I refer to as logical consequences, not only for good behavior, as I described, and so on, but also for inappropriate behavior. And I talked about examples where, given what the child is doing, there might be a logical consequence, that could teach the child that maybe I need to, engage in some alternative behavior. At any rate, she listened to this discussion, and the following week, she we had our session, and I said, "So how are things going?" She says, "Oh, really, much better." She said, "I really liked our discussion that we had last week about logical consequences, and let me tell you what I did." I said, "Okay, tell me." So she goes on to say that a day or so following our last meeting, our last discussion, our last session, I should say, she came home again from work, about to make dinner, and lo and behold, as usual, there's the dishwasher, plumb full of dishes. So this time, instead of going and finding Tim, and kind of, urging him to get in the kitchen and then playing the game with him that he can't do this or doesn't know where this goes and all that stuff and so forth, she ignored all that and she emptied the dishwasher herself. So now it's dinner time. The family seated around the dinner. They had it kind of had a formal kind of dinner situation and so on, and it was an Italian family, and so she made spaghetti and meatballs. Right. So, oh, there was grandma living. The mother-in-law
That's
was
right.
also
That's
living
right.
there too, as I recall. All right. So it's now that everyone is seated around the table. Uh, Dad, the four kids, and grandma. So she starts off. She takes a plate and puts it in front of mother-in-law, gives her some spaghetti and so forth, and a meatball, and pours some sauce. Then she goes, to the husband, same thing, puts down a plate, gives him his portion of spaghetti and a meatball, and so on, and then goes to the first son, and so forth, and then maybe the next son, whatever. Then she comes to Tim, and she goes to Tim and she goes into the pot and she takes the spaghetti and plops it right on the table in front of him. And then she takes a meatball and puts it right on top of the spaghetti. And then, just for a little added drama, she takes a little, tablespoon of sauce and puts sauce over it. And she looks, and then she says to me, the room went quiet. I'm sure everyone was thinking, Mom has finally lost it, right?
Right.
And then she looks at Timmy and she says, Tim, if you choose not to do your chore and empty the dishwasher, then I will choose not to give you a plate to eat with for dinner. It's
Mm.
now up to you. And that was the last time she ever had to worry about Timothy doing his chore. So the power of the logical consequence can be huge.
Can you just imagine that dinner table, just putting it right on in front of him without the plate? That's a great solution she came up with.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Well, I can give you another example where I used it. My older son, who now, by the way, is 47 and is a litigation attorney in Southern California. But when he was about 12, I think it was, um, one of his chores on Saturday was to clean the pool. I had instructed him how to do it. He knew that was part of his chores for his allowance and things of that nature. And he was to do it anytime before noon. Now, it turned out that that particular Saturday that I was talking about, that at 1 o'clock was one of his Little League games. And he liked Little League because he happened to be a star. He played shortstop and he was cleanup hitter
Nice.
and so on. So he liked the accolades and he was a good athlete. In fact, he had a track scholarship to Kansas in
Mm.
college. So he was an athlete and so on. So anyhow, it's now past noon, all right, and he's watching TV or whatever. The pool's not done, and so forth. And I know we have this 1 o'clock Little League game that I'm sure he's interested in attending. So now I'm thinking, all right, what do I do about this? Now, of course, I could have gotten into walked into the family room and, grabbed him by the arm and said, "What are you doing, Josh? You're irresponsible. Get your butt out there and, do the pool." But that's not my style. So I waited till about, quarter to one or so, and then I went out there and started doing the pool.
Mm.
Uh, Doing his job. Okay? Well, a few minutes to one, Josh comes running out, with cleats and everything, and his baseball uniform and so forth. Now the game was at 1:30. The coach wanted us there at one. That was typical, right? And so one, so a little warm up between 1:30 and 1 and 1:30. And he says, "Dad, we got to go. It's 1 o'clock. The coach wants." And I said, "Yeah, Josh, gee, I'm sorry, but you neglected to do your chore here today. So of course that left only me to do it. So we'll leave when I'm done. You see." So of course I took my time and finally got it, and so forth. And we got there just about the time that the game was about to start. And I walked up to the coach and explained, and he knew me and he knew what I did and so on. And I said to him, "We're late because Josh didn't do his chore, and I'm actually applying this consequence. But you can do whatever you choose. But since he didn't have his warm up and so forth, my suggestion might be maybe sit him out an inning or two and have him do some stretching, whatever, on his own and so on." And he said, "Hey, Doc, whatever you think, it's fine by me." So there, that's what he did. So he benched Josh for 2 innings and so on. And Josh is sitting there. You
Doing.
can see that he's aggravated. But you know something? I didn't have to remind him about doing his pool
Mm.
cleaning any Saturday after that.
Hmm.
Again, the logical consequence of in this case, the inappropriate behavior, had the desired effect.
But what about the attitude of, well, when the child is doing the right thing, that's what they're supposed to do. So why should I reward that?
Well, that's an interesting question. How many adults today are working jobs, doing what they're supposed to do,
Mm.
with no one ever telling them, "Hey, good job. I
Mm.
like the way you handle that contract," and so on. I hear people complain all the time. That here I am doing my job, and no one seems to give a darn. Now, if I mess up, now I'm going to be called into the boss's office and be read the riot act. So this is the way this works. You screw
Mm.
up, now I'm going to be talking to the boss. You do the job. No one even takes a few minutes just to let you know
Exactly.
that they appreciate what you're doing. Well, what does that develop over time?
Complacency,
Yes, right. Loyalty, I mean, disloyalty. I mean,
disloyalty. Yeah.
after a while, you're sort of going through the motions and so on, and such.
Just
No
not
one
getting
likes
noticed, keeping your head down.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do enough to just you're right. Stay under the radar.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that applies to kids as well. Look, they should be reinforced. That's the behavioral term for the things that we want them to do. Now, by
Mm,
the way, this is not just about pleasing the parent. Okay?
mm,
That's not only what it's about. It's about training good skills.
mm,
You so like being responsible, doing your job, completing your job, being on time, learning to relate appropriately, with your sibling, how to get along with others. See, these are life skills that we're teaching here. It's not just make daddy happy. That's not that. That's maybe a small part of it, but that's not what it's all about. It's about teaching life skills, and yeah. So if you expect them to do it and they get little or no recognition for it, but then when they mess up, then you're all over them. Frankly, what you're telling them is they get a hell of a lot more, pardon the expression, more attention for being bad than good. That's not what you want to share with them. I,
but it
I mean,
is sorry.
go ahead.
It is what is
Go ahead.
it is instilled into them at their own job often. So they're just kind of taking that attitude and bringing it home. And it's got to be reversed. It's got to be broken.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a relatively simple concept, but it's unfortunately rarely implemented
Mm,
uh, in the you know certainly within the home and definitely in the work world. I mean, there are so many managers who are walking around with the attitude you were referring to. Well,
mm,
this is their job. I expect them to do it,
yeah.
and that's it. But if they don't, well, they'll hear from me. Well, frankly, that really doesn't work. If you want your employees, to do more than expected, enjoy their job. How about being creative? Think.
Mm,
We talked about staying under the radar. Don't we want our employees to do something maybe a little creative? Think
mm,
about a better way to do it, and so forth. Well, if you're working under these conditions where they expect you to do your job,
good
but if
point.
you mess up in any way, you're going to be punished, if you will. Well, then how likely are you to be thinking about novel ways to do things?
Mm,
That's talking about putting your head in the radar, isn't it?
yeah. Squash.
You're not going to do that. You're not. so,
We see that
so really, it's self-destructive.
it is
You know,
self-destructive. Yeah. And we see that in sales a lot where, I have a business background, I have a small business, and, you know, oftentimes the salespeople are told, look, you meet your quota, you can come here and throw up on my desk. You could do whatever you want. You're meeting your quota. Once you don't, then we'll see. So they're encouraged to just meet that quota and don't go far beyond it. Maybe push it to the next quarter so they can meet it then. So they're just encouraged just to kind of, like you say, this doesn't happen everywhere, but it does happen in some places, and you kind of see it rolling down to parenthood. How should parenthood change once the children go into, after high school and enter young adulthood?
you're impressing me more and more. You're now talking about, of course, my second book. uh, which is coping with your adolescence. Well, it does change, of course, because now we're dealing with teens, young adults almost, if you will. And so obviously your parenting has to be different. You have to now allow the teen to make more of their own choices, even wrong ones sometimes, within reason. I mean, I'm not talking taking drugs, or driving the car 100 miles an hour and so on. No, those are things that, of course, need to be addressed. But again, hopefully now, if you've set the stage correctly, like we've talked about during their childhood, and some of these patterns now are ingrained, and now they've got some of these life skills. They're on their way. Um, but again, now that there are teens, now we want to prepare them for life. Okay? And so on. I would say, now and then, your boss, isn't going to accept this. So for instance, if I see one of my kids just kind of, I don't know, picking the lint out of their navel, I don't know, and the bus is going to arrive in about 5 minutes and so forth. Um, what do I say? What do I say? What do I do? Nothing, as a matter of fact.
Mm.
I let it happen. Because now, of course, he has to face the music. Now he'll have to ride his bike to school, which he dislikes. He would rather take the bus, but he's going to be late. And now he's going to have to check in at the principal's office. Now, what he doesn't know is I, of course, have a connection with the principal or whatever, and I might send a message saying, "Hey, Josh is going to be late today. He missed the bus. Feel free to apply any consequence you feel appropriate." So he might end up coming back, after school and cleaning back, blackboards or whiteboards or something, on top of the fact that he's late to class and so on and so on. So I'm start now. What I'm saying is we're now letting life, because again, if you're,
Yeah.
I'm preparing him for the real world. If you're working for somebody or with somebody, what's going to happen when you're late?
Mm.
There's going to be consequences, and so on. I mean, Josh, obviously is the oldest one. I could talk about my younger one too, believe me. But I remember he had one of those photo tickets for,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, speeding and so on. He didn't tell us about it until of course we got it in the mail, and when he came home, there it was, right there on the kitchen table for him to see. And he went, "Oh, I knew this was going to happen." And I said, "So, what? How do you?" And I see here this ticket's going to cost $180. How are you going to handle that? And he went, well, I don't know. I assume you're going to ground me from from the car. And I said, well, I'll do that if you want me to, but I don't see how this gets this ticket paid.
Mm.
Where's 180 going to come from? Well, I don't know. Well, do you think I'm just going to hand it to you, reward you for having a speeding ticket? Actually, this was to go to the school, by the way, not the ticket, because I didn't want him to get the ticket because the ticket would mean my insurance costs would go up, which, by the way, if it did, he would have had to pay
Right.
or be responsible for. And I made sure he
Mm.
knew that. And so he said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, both my car and mom's car needs to be detailed," which he knew how to do. I taught him to do that, and we'll give you how about $45 each for that. So there's 90 of it. And Mom was talking about having the windows done outside and so forth. And I think the backyard could be weeded. So I think when that's all done, I'll write a check for 180 for you to take that class. And by the way, give up your entire Saturday, to take that class. Um, and next time, then, when you're driving, you might think about your speed, because the next time you won't be allowed to take this class. We'll have to pay another ticket. And by the way, my insurance costs are going to go up because we had to pay that ticket. And obviously, you'll be responsible for that. And of course, that'll be more labor on your part.
Absolutely. I wonder what your viewpoint will be on this. So my father's an Italian immigrant, and so when I was 10 years old, now this is 45 years ago. I'm 55, so it's 1978. It's the first day of summer. I was ending the third grade. My father gives me a suitcase, Doctor Larry, and says, "Put your clothes in here," and I did so. And he proceeds. I'm from the Northeast. Proceeds me to bring me to New Haven to the bus station, tells the bus driver to drop me off Terminal 1 at JFK in New York City, gives me a bus ticket, a plane ticket, and a picture of my grandmother. So you're going to meet your grandmother in Milan. So at 10 years old, I get on a bus with a suitcase, excited as heck. I get to fly on a plane. The bus takes me to New York City. I get to the airport. I ask people. I get on a flight. I fly to Milan. At the airport, I take out the picture. I meet my grandmother and uncle for the first time in my life. I'm elated. I meet my cousins and I meet all my relatives, and I'm there. So, I mean, today, my father would probably be arrested for sending a 10-year-old.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But it was just different back then, and just
Oh,
the
yeah.
parenting was just very different.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Sure. Oh yeah, no, 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 no question. I mean, I grew up in Wisconsin, and after a big snow, the plows would come and pile all the snow, onto the curb and so forth, and then they would shovel a little bit where the sidewalk was. And and what that really meant was that was dangerous to cross the street, because to really cross the street, you'd have to look just
Uh,
around the snow, to see if a car was coming and so on. And I had about 8 blocks to walk to school, and it might be 5 below 0 as well,
right. Oh
but
man.
my mom would give me a nice breakfast, and I'd put on my boots and whatever, and walk to school, facing death at every corner. But that's the way it was at that time. Now, when early in my career, I was a school psychologist in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I currently live today. But way back then in the 70s, and so forth. And what amused me so is that when the sky even turned gray a little bit, okay, the moms would come with the cars and start lining up. So help me God, a
Wow.
third of a mile down the road to pick up their little kitty. God forbid that he get a little rain from the time he left school till the time he walked to the bus, and from the time he got off the bus and walked across the street to his house.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, things have changed. Yeah.
Things have changed. Yeah. So when I started my business, doctor, in the 90s, I wasn't paying attention to myself. I was working 14-hour days, 16-hour days. And before you know it, I got up to 340 pounds. I was eating pizza at night and drinking soda, etc. And my daughter was just born. And the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, you're not going to see her graduate. So I spent the next 6, 7 months. I lost about 130 pounds. And people always want to know the secret. What's your secret? What you say? There's no secret, doctor. The secret is discipline. That's it. That's how I lost the weight. I got focused. I got disciplined. I realized that my consequence for my I'm not just for myself anymore. I have now have this new person in my life and I've got to be better. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Dr. Larry.
uh, well, that's why I responded to your podcast in the first place. Uh, Discipline is something I believe in very strongly for myself and, of course, family, and for that matter, I tried to teach it to my patients as well, and such. Um, I I happen to be I'll be 77 here in December.
Mm,
I'm I work out several times a week. I'm in the process of getting certified as a yoga instructor, although I do yoga instruction now, and so on. I bike 50 miles, bench press my own weight,
good for you.
and so on. Frankly, I'm in better shape now than I was when I was half my age.
Mm,
So on. There's a saying that goes with what you are talking about, and I used to address this often with a lot of my clients. Many times, when we would be, when I would be working with a patient and so forth, um, we would uh, we would be talking about goals, okay, objectives, and so forth. As a matter of fact, I worked in a very objective um, form. We in the field we call it solution focused or solution oriented. Okay, so somebody would come in and of course they would share their concerns, whatever it might be, and so on. And I would always leave uh, about 10 minutes before the end of the first session, and then I would ask this question. And the question would be, how will we know when we're done?
hmm,
What will you be doing differently? See, I thought, and I knew those were very important questions. And the reason that they're important is they add focus. Okay, they add objectivity. Okay? Um, Somebody might say, "Well, I'm depressed," or "I'm sad," or "I have a low self image," or statements like that. And the truth is, I don't have a ready made cure, for low self esteem or sadness or whatever. Okay, the way I believe, the way I was trained as a clinical psychologist and so forth, is that what you do determines how it is you feel.
hmm,
Okay, um, and so by focusing, exclusively here, on what it would look like. Okay, so if you're telling me, let's say that you have low self-esteem, okay, and now I'm saying, all right, how will we know when we're done? And he said, well, my self-esteem would be better, and then I'd say, well, how am I supposed to measure that? I don't have a yardstick for that. If your self-esteem is better, then how are we going to know that? How are you going to know
hmm,
that? And how would I know that? And so we talked some more. He says, I would lose some weight, get in shape, maybe whatever. Okay, eat a better diet. So I'm writing now. Oh, I'm starting to write. And so after a few minutes, I say, so, all right, I'd say, okay, so you're telling me that if your self-esteem were to be better, you would be doing a couple things. You would be going to the gym on a regular basis. You would be eating a healthier diet, and so on. You would read more books, etc. Are you telling me this is what you mean? That if you did, yeah, if I were doing those things, yeah, I'd feel better about it. Yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
Um, and so you see, what have I done
Hmm.
in that first session at the end?
You've reframed.
I did. Yeah, I did reframe it. How? We have direction now. We know where to
Mm.
go. Okay, we're being specific here. This person knows what to do. And then I'd say, all right, here are the 3, 4 things you said that if you were to do, your self-esteem would be, better. All right. So which of these, let's say, just to start with, you think you'd like to address first? And so let's say, well, okay, maybe getting in shape. All right. All right. So what could you do between now and our next session, you know, to start moving in that direction? And then we would talk about it. And I had one patient who once said, there's a gym right across the street that I've lived for probably 6 years. I guess I should go in there and maybe sign up and get a trainer and have the trainer show me around. I said, okay, can you do that by next session? Yes. So you see, what do we have? We have an objectively stated goal. Right?
Hmm.
Right? Now, sometimes, and you see, I believe very strongly that objectifying our goals puts us a giant step ahead to achieving them, as opposed to amorphously saying, well, I got to get in shape, and I got to eat better, and I need to read more books, or
It's
I need to be
ambiguous.
more. Yeah, it's too ambiguous. All right. Now, I'm not going to say every time, excuse me, that they always did it. And many times they would come back and say, I'd say, so how are we working on toward our objectives? Well, I didn't do so well this week. And I said, really, why is that? And he said, well, I'll be honest, I didn't feel like it. In other words, you didn't feel like going to the gym? No, I didn't. Okay. Here's the phrase that I mentioned before. It is far easier to behave your way into a new feeling than to feel your way into a new behavior.
Hmm.
So when
Hmm.
I would hear that, I would say, Joe or Bill, whatever his name might be, Bill, I understand what you're saying. There are times, because I work out regularly as well. There are times when I wake up and I don't feel like going to the gym. Like sleeping in feels better. But you know what I do? I go anyhow because
Hmm.
that's who I am. And once I'm there, and now I'm on the treadmill or the bicycle or whatever aerobic machine I use to start with to warm up. After I've been there 5 minutes or so, how do I now feel about being there?
Hmm.
And he says, well, I guess you feel better. I said, yeah. Okay. So what did I do? You see, I behaved my way into that new feeling rather than operating the way you're operating, that you have to feel like it first before you do it.
Hmm.
No, no. If we set a goal and it's the right goal, we do it, even if we don't feel like it, because it's a funny thing. Once we start doing it, we're happy we did.
Mm.
And I've pretty much followed my life that way.
So discipline for you is goal setting, achieving those goals. It's more. It's just as important to set the with the right parameters, the specific goal, than it is to achieve it.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah. And I, I'm, I'm happy. I mean,
Hmm.
I've lived well, and so on. And it's not because I was given anything. I'll tell you, anything I have, and so forth. I built myself. I mean, my parents, cared about me, and so on, but they didn't have. I paid for every penny of my education,
Mm.
and so on. And so, and it's not always been, milk and honey. I've had setbacks for sure. Everyone has. We all do, and so on. And sometimes, we get pushed back and so forth. Some people quit. I don't. I set another goal and I work toward it, and so on. I'm the only guy in the yoga class, of course, right now,
Mm. Mm.
amongst about 20 younger women, which is, by the way, not so bad, you understand.
No, no,
Uh,
no, no.
but many of them, marvel, or not marvel. They say, you're older than my grandfather, and he can't walk up the stairs, and
Hmm.
you're doing these things, and so on. But see, my objective for doing this, yoga training and so on, is to teach seniors to do that. I
Hmm.
believe yoga for seniors is
Hmm.
like gold. It addresses so many things that seniors need. Um, you First, exercise, flexibility, balance, sociability. You
Right,
do it in a
social,
group,
yeah, yeah.
and so on. And so I'm already teaching, seniors in where I live. I live here in Phoenix, and I have we have a summer residence in Southern California, and I teach there as well. But now, in another couple of months, I'll be, you know, totally certified. So,
Mm.
but my objective is to get more seniors to do this.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
What
just because
motivates you, doctor?
uh, me,
Yeah. How?
yeah, I like, as I said, I'll be 77, but I like knowing that I can uh, face um, any obstacle that I might have. Um, We just came back from a trip to Portugal, which was lovely. We probably walked 10 miles a day. I climbed probably two, three castles a day
Hmm.
with hundreds of steps each time, and so forth. Got beautiful pictures from the top, and so forth. Um, yeah, and I do that, and so on. So that's what motivates me. I mean, age for me is just a number.
Hmm.
Um, so,
So
so
good health.
that's one of it, sure. Um, and like, even though I don't see patients actively anymore, I still speak. I speak
Yeah.
to other mental health associations on private practice development, on parenting. I also speak to the community frequently on parenting, marriage, and so on. As you know, I do writing. I've got
Hmm.
numerous articles. In fact, those articles are available on my website. Um, and so on. I also coach young therapists on how to get started in practice or market your practice and so on. So I stay active intellectually as well.
You certainly do. So, how do you measure success?
um, a number of different ways. Uh, Being healthy, being loved, so on.
Mm,
Is important. Nan and I, my wife and I, recently celebrated 52 years,
congratulations.
and so on. That's important. Having good relations with my sons and their respective wives. Um, I love spending time with my three grandkids, so on. I have my wife and I have lots of friends and spend a lot of time with them, and so on. Certainly traveling, and so on. And being able to afford, being able to live comfortably, and so on. So, um, yeah,
Very good.
those are the things that I I would use to measure that.
Well, absolute pleasure, Dr. Larry Waldman. I was so excited when you accepted this. I love what you do. I love your books. I hear you on podcasts. If anybody listening, you kind of mentioned some of those things, but where can people find you if they want to?
Well, sure. Thank you for that opportunity. Well, my email address is LFW. Those are my initials. That's LFW at larrywaldmanphd.com. My website that I just referred to is Top Phoenix Psychologist, all one word, .com. So on. And of course, my books are available. We referred to two of them. My first one that I talked about is Who's Raising Whom. The second one is Coping with Your Adolescent, and we touched on that a little bit. And apparently, you've looked through those, which I very much appreciate again. The third one is my marriage manual. Is How Come I Love Him I Can't Live with Him.
Mm,
That came out in the 90s. The fourth one is Too Busy Earning a Living to Make Your Fortune. That's I talk about in that one why people get stuck in their ruts and so on, and how they can move forward, and so on. And I've followed that advice as well. Let me just add that as a clinical psychologist, I did very non-traditional kinds of things, not just sit in front of patients. I did a number of things that made me more successful, like working in the court system and things like that,
mm,
which frankly paid me a lot more than doing individual hours of
right.
psychotherapy, which I still did for the better part of 50 years. Next book is Overcoming Your Negotiaphobia, Negotiating Your Way Through Life. That one. Then the book that I speak on a lot is The Graduate Course You Never Had, and that's for professionals and how to develop and manage and market their practice. The truth of the matter, though, is that book applies to basically any service business, and I've actually spoken to a lot of other business people who aren't mental health providers, but are different kinds of providers. I've spoken to chiropractors, psychiatrists, and so on. I even spoke not too long ago to people who do collaborative divorce, attorneys, for instance, on how to market their collaborative divorce approach, which is very much needed, and so on. And then, of course, my last book that we started to talk about, Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex, which, of course, the subtitle is what every divorced parent needs to know. So if you are
Mm.
contemplating a divorce or are divorced and have kids, that would be a good book for both parents to read.
Very good.
And
Top
again,
Phoenix. Oh, sorry.
Topphoenixpsychologist.com. Right.
Yeah, plural, psychologist.com. We'll make sure we put it in the
Not
show
plural.
notes.
Topphoenixpsychologist.com. Right.
Not plural, it's singular.
Not
Yes,
plural.
yes.
Yeah. Right.
I'll make sure we put it in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time. If I'm ever in your area, perhaps you, Nan, and I can get a cup of tea. I'd really appreciate that.
Hey, sure. Love that.
You be well, Dr. Larry. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.